Hi there. This interview is about one of the most painful problems in real production environments: alert fatigue. Too many alerts, too much noise, and the moments when the one alert that actually mattered was ignored. I am going to ask you the same questions you would hear in a real DevOps or SRE interview focused on alerting, signals, and operational maturity. Pause the video after each question, answer it out loud, then listen to how a strong candidate would reason through it. If this kind of interview prep helps you, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Warm-up behavioral questions. Tell me about a time when alerts overwhelmed your team instead of helping them. A strong answer here would sound like this. Early in one role, we had alerts firing for almost every metric crossing a threshold: CPU spikes, memory fluctuations, short-lived latency blips. On-call engineers were getting paged constantly, even when users were not impacted. Over time, people started to mentally tune out alerts, which was dangerous. I helped lead a cleanup where we reviewed alerts one by one and asked a simple question: what user impact does this represent, and what action should be taken at 3 in the morning? If there was no clear action, we either downgraded it to a dashboard signal or removed it entirely. That reduced pages significantly and restored trust in alerts. How do you personally decide whether something deserves a page versus a notification or a dashboard metric? A good candidate would say something like this: I think about urgency and actionability. A page should mean something is actively impacting users, or will very soon if nothing is done. It should require immediate human intervention. If the signal is useful for awareness but not urgent, it belongs as a notification or in a dashboard. I also consider who needs to see it. Not everything needs to wake someone up. Clear ownership and intent behind each alert is more important than catching every possible anomaly. Describe a time when you missed an important alert or responded too late. What did you learn? A strong response might be: we once had an alert tied to error rate that technically fired, but it was buried among several other noisy alerts. The on-call engineer acknowledged the page, but assumed it was another transient issue. It turned out to be a slow-rolling failure that escalated over 30 minutes. After the incident, we realized the alert lacked context. It did not show rate of change or user impact. We redesigned it to include burn rate and request volume, so the severity was obvious at a glance. The lesson was that alert design matters as much as alert coverage. How do you get buy-in from teams to reduce or change alerts they are used to? A solid answer would be: I try to approach it with data and empathy. People are often attached to alerts because they represent safety. I start by showing how often alerts fire, how many are acknowledged without action, and how that affects on-call stress. Then I involve the team in redefining what success looks like. When engineers help shape alerts, instead of having them removed unilaterally, they are more comfortable letting go of noisy signals. Core technical and scenario questions. Let us talk fundamentals. What is alert fatigue, and why does it happen in production systems? A strong candidate would think out loud like this: alert fatigue happens when engineers are exposed to too many alerts that do not require action or do not correlate to real problems. Over time, the human response to alerts degrades. People start ignoring them, delaying response, or auto-acknowledging without investigation. It usually happens because alerts are built directly on raw metrics without context. For example, alerting on CPU usage, crossing a static threshold, instead of alerting on sustained saturation combined with degraded service. The system technically works, but the signal design ignores human limitations. Imagine you join a team where there are hundreds of alerts and no one trusts them. What is the first thing you do? A strong answer would go something like this: I would not start by deleting alerts. I would start by inventorying them. I want to know which alerts page people, which ones send notifications, how often they fire, and whether they led to meaningful action in the past. I would talk to the on-call engineers and ask which alerts they ignore and why. From there, I would focus first on paging alerts. Those should be the smallest, highest quality set. Everything else can be evaluated later. The goal early on is to restore confidence, not perfection. How do you design an alert that actually represents user impact instead of infrastructure noise? A strong candidate might say, I try to alert on symptoms, not causes. Users experience errors, latency, and unavailable features. Infrastructure metrics like CPU or memory are useful for diagnosis, but they are rarely good paging signals on their own. I prefer alerts tied to service-level indicators like error rate, request success, or latency percentiles. If I do alert on infrastructure, I make sure it is tied to saturation that will predictably cause user impact, not just a temporary spike. You have a latency alert that fires often, but usually resolves itself. Engineers complain about it. What do you change? A thoughtful answer would be, first, I would look at the alert conditions. Is it based on an average that is too sensitive or a percentile that reflects real user experience? I might add duration, so the alert only fires if latency is elevated for a meaningful window. I would also consider combining it with traffic volume. High latency during low traffic may not matter, while high latency during peak traffic likely does. The goal is to filter out noise without hiding real degradation. How do error budgets, or SLOs, help reduce alert fatigue? A strong response could be, error budgets give teams a quantitative way to decide when to alert. Instead of paging on every small issue, we page when we are burning error budget too fast. That aligns alerts with reliability goals and business impact. It also helps teams accept occasional failures without panic. Alerts become about risk to the objective, not perfection of the system. We will continue from here by going deeper into trade-offs, edge cases, and high-pressure alerting decisions. Pause here, reflect on your answers, and be honest with yourself about how you would perform in a real interview. Let us go deeper. Imagine you have two alerts. One fires rarely, but usually means something is seriously wrong. The other fires often, but sometimes catches issues early. You are asked to keep only one paging alert. How do you decide? A strong candidate would reason through it like this. I would start by clarifying the goal of paging. Paging is about protecting users and the business, not catching every anomaly. If the rare alert consistently represents real user impact and requires immediate action, that is a strong candidate for paging. For the noisy alert, I would ask whether it truly enables earlier intervention that changes outcomes. If most of the time it fires without action or resolves itself, it might be better as a warning or dashboard signal. I would rather have fewer pages that always matter than early signals that train people to ignore alerts. That said, I might keep the noisy signal in a non-paging channel if it still provides diagnostic value. Now imagine a system where everything is technically healthy, but alerts are still firing because thresholds are static. Traffic patterns have changed over time. How do you redesign alerts to adapt to this? A thoughtful answer would sound like this. Static thresholds often age poorly because systems evolve. I would look at historical data to understand normal behavior during different times of day and traffic levels. From there, I might move toward relative or rate-based alerts instead of absolute values. For example, alerting on sudden changes or sustained deviation from baseline rather than fixed numbers. I would also pair signals together so that alerts fire when multiple conditions align, such as increased latency plus elevated error rate, instead of a single metric crossing a line. You are on call and receive a page. Metrics look bad, but dashboards are unclear. Logs are noisy. Traces are incomplete. How do you decide whether to escalate, roll back, or wait? A strong candidate would explain their thinking step by step. First, I try to determine user impact as quickly as possible. Are users reporting issues, or are error rates climbing in a way that suggests real harm? If there is clear impact and risk is increasing, I lean toward fast mitigation, such as a rollback or feature disable, even if the root cause is not fully understood. If impact is ambiguous, I gather one or two high signal indicators and set a short time box. If things improve, I avoid unnecessary action. If they worsen, I escalate. The key is balancing speed with confidence and avoiding paralysis from incomplete data. How do you design alerts for systems with partial failures or degraded performance rather than total outages? A strong response might be, partial failures are harder because the system is technically up, but users are unhappy. I focus on signals that reflect quality of experience rather than availability alone. Latency percentiles, success ratios for critical endpoints, or queue backlog growth can be more meaningful than simple up or down checks. I also think about thresholds that represent unacceptable degradation, not just failure. The alert should trigger when the system is no longer meeting expectations, even if it is still responding. Tell me about a time when you intentionally chose not to alert on something. Why was that the right decision? A good candidate would say something like this. We had frequent, short-lived spikes in CPU due to background jobs. Initially, we alerted on them, but they rarely caused issues and created noise. After reviewing incidents, we realized the system handled those spikes gracefully. We removed the alert and instead tracked the metric in dashboards. That reduced noise without increasing risk. The key was understanding system behavior and trusting it instead of alerting on every deviation. Now consider trade-offs. You can either reduce alert volume aggressively or risk missing edge cases. How do you balance safety versus signal quality? A mature answer would sound like this. I accept that no alerting system is perfect. My goal is not zero missed issues, but high confidence signals. I prioritize alerts that protect core user journeys and business critical paths. For edge cases, I rely more on observability, dashboards, and periodic reviews. I also revisit alerting regularly. Alerting is not set and forget. As systems and usage change, the balance needs adjustment. The real risk is alerting so much that people stop responding thoughtfully. Before we move on, pause and think. In your own systems, which alerts actually help you make decisions under pressure, and which ones just add stress? That reflection matters just as much as knowing the right terminology. Let us switch gears into judgment under pressure. You are the on-call engineer. It is 2 a.m., you get paged. The alert technically meets its threshold, but you have seen this pattern before, and it often self-resolves. At the same time, this alert has historically been tied to one real incident that caused serious customer impact. Do you act immediately or wait? A calm and mature answer would sound like this. I would not decide based on the alert alone. I would quickly check one or two high-signal indicators that tell me whether users are actually being affected right now. For example, error rates on core endpoints or user-facing latency. If those are stable, I would watch closely for a short window rather than take disruptive action immediately. At the same time, I would stay fully engaged and ready to act if the signal worsens. The key is being intentional. I am neither ignoring the alert nor panicking. I am buying clarity with time while staying accountable for the outcome. Now imagine leadership is pushing back. They want fewer alerts because engineers are burning out. At the same time, product teams are worried that reducing alerts will increase risk. You are asked to make the call. What do? A strong candidate would respond like this. I would reframe the conversation away from alert count and toward outcomes. I would ask which alerts actually changed behavior during incidents and which ones did not. From there, I would propose an experiment. Reduce or downgrade a small set of low-value alerts while closely tracking incident response quality and user impact. This lowers risk while addressing burnout. The decision is not permanent. It is measured, reversible, and guided by data rather than fear. Here is a harder one. An alert fires that technically violates an SLO, but users are not complaining, and revenue impact is unclear. Do you treat this as an incident? A thoughtful answer would be, I would treat it as a signal, not necessarily an incident. SLOs are promises, but they exist to protect user experience. If the violation is minor and short-lived, I would document it and look for trends rather than trigger a full incident process. However, if this is part of a pattern or erosion over time, I would escalate it. The risk is not the single event, but normalization of small failures that eventually compound into real outages. Last pressure question. After a major outage, leadership demands more alerts, so this never happens again. You believe more alerts will make things worse. How do you respond? A mature response would sound like this. I would acknowledge the emotional context first. After an outage, the instinct is to add protection everywhere. Then I would explain that alerts are not protection by themselves, they are decision tools. I would propose focusing on a small number of alerts that clearly represent user harm and actionable states, and pairing that with better runbooks and observability. I would emphasize that the goal is faster and calmer response, not louder alarms. This keeps the system safer long-term rather than more fragile. Before we wrap up, take a moment to reflect. Alerting is not about being warned of everything. It is about being warned of the right things at the right time, in a way that helps you think clearly under pressure. Which question in this interview made you pause the longest? Was it deciding when not to act? Was it pushing back on leadership? Or was it admitting that some alerts feel safe but are actually harmful? If you are preparing for real DevOps, SRE, or platform interviews, pause the video and answer these questions out loud. Pay attention not just to what you would do, but why. If this interview helped you sharpen how you think about alerts, signals, and decision-making under pressure, subscribe for the next one. Each interview focuses on real scenarios you are likely to face in production, not just textbook definitions. Thanks for spending the time. I will see you in the next interview.